On the borders of Europe, a new wave of fear was rising. In the halls of the Roman Empire, whispers echoed. A new power is emerging, one that will turn our cities into ashes. This power was not born from mighty fortresses or grand empires, but from the endless fields of the Eurasian steppe, where only to whisper the wind, the thunder of hooves, and the lines of nomadic tents filled the horizon. This was the world of the Huns. And in one of these tents, around the year 406 AD, a child was born. His name was Attila. No one knew that this little nomad would one day be remembered as the most feared warrior in history. But even in his childhood, his eyes carried a strange spark, as if destiny had already chosen his path. Hun children played with wooden arrows and raced on horseback, but these games were their training for war. Attila, too, mastered archery and horsemanship at an early age. The elders of the tribe would often say, "This child will one day change our history." Attila was born into a powerful family. His father and uncle were among the respected leaders of the Hun tribes. That is why he did not only learn the skills of battle. Politics, strategy, and leadership were also flowing in his blood. After the year 410 AD, while the Roman Empire was breaking apart with rebellions and weakness, the Huns were growing stronger, uniting under one banner. And in these very years, a young boy was stepping closer to his true identity. That boy, who was just a young nomad today, would soon spread terror across the map of the world. That boy whom history would call the Scourge of God. The Huns were a nomadic people who emerged from the vast fields of the Eurasian steppe and reached into the very heart of Europe. They were not dwellers of cities, but warriors who lived their lives on horseback. They had no permanent homes. Their tents, their horses, and their weapons were their true world. Their speed and martial skills shook the kingdoms of Europe. Roman historians wrote that the arrival of the Huns was like a storm. They struck like lightning, giving their enemies no chance to recover. Their archery was so precise that even while galloping at full speed, their arrows never missed a mark. For their enemies, they were a terrifying nightmare. After 420 AD, the Huns began to increase pressure on the eastern frontiers of the Roman Empire. At times they attacked Byzantine cities. At other times they reduced villages and towns to ashes. Rome was forced to make treaties with them. Treaties that included heavy payments of gold and tribute. This was the moment when the Huns proved that they were not merely nomads, but a power that could not be ignored. The growing strength of the Huns lay in their unique methods of warfare. They were masters of swift raids. They would appear suddenly, unleash destruction, and vanish like the wind. The Roman armies, weighed down with heavy armor, seemed helpless before them. At this time, Attila had not yet grown into a leader, but he was watching all of this closely with his tribe. He was learning that the true power of the Huns lay in their unity and their unmatched skill in battle. He also saw how the Roman Empire, with every treaty and every tribute, was becoming weaker and weaker. This was the backdrop in which Attila was being raised. One world was collapsing, and another was rising. The sun of Rome was setting, and the storm of the Huns was marching toward its peak. Around 430 AD, the power of the Huns was growing further in Europe. The Roman Empire was weakening. In those days, Attila stepped into youth. He was no longer just a nomadic boy, but was beginning to be recognized as a rising leader of his tribe. Attila's family already held a prominent place in the leadership of the Huns. His uncle Ruga and his brother Bleda were among the important leaders of the Hunnic tribes. Living alongside them, Attila was learning not only the strategies of war, but also the complex art of negotiations and treaties. For the Huns, power was not gained by the sword alone, but also through politics and cunning, and Attila was beginning to understand the secret. The Roman Empire at that time was entangled in internal turmoil, rebellions, and chains of fragile agreements. Taking advantage of the situation, the Huns increased their pressure on Rome. Roman envoys often came to Attila's tent to pay tribute or beg for peace. These scenes were before Attila's eyes, and he realized that if the greatest empire in the world could weaken, then even a nomadic nation could overpower it. Attila's personality combined both harshness and wisdom. He was a fierce warrior and also an opportunistic politician. Even in his early years, his tribe began to recognize his insight. They saw that this young chieftain was not merely a fighter on horseback, but a leader capable of uniting the entire Hun confederation into one. When his uncle Ruga died, the burden of leadership fell upon the shoulders of Attila and his brother Bleda. Together they advanced the Huns, but the elders and warriors of the tribe knew that the true mind and the real strength was Attila. His style, his strategy, and his courage were impressing everyone. This was the early period of Attila's leadership, but it laid the foundation of his character. He was no longer just a nomadic youth, but had become a leader whose eyes were fixed on the very heart of the Roman Empire. In 434 AD, the two brothers became joint rulers of the Huns. This was the moment when a new storm began to rise on the soil of Europe. Bleda was gentle and inclined toward peace, preferring treaties and stability. In contrast, Attila was harsh, fearless, and favored aggressive strategies. He was indeed a co-ruler, but the real decisions and influence rested with Attila. In 435, the two brothers signed the Treaty of Margus with Rome. Rome agreed to pay heavy tribute, return prisoners, and grant trade privileges. On the surface, it was a peace treaty, but in reality, it was Attila's first major triumph. He had forced Rome to bow, proving that the Huns were no longer mere nomads. But peace did not last long. Hun horsemen repeatedly struck at the Roman frontiers. They attacked like lightning and vanished like the wind. Their archery was so precise that even while riding at full gallop, their arrows rarely missed a mark. The Roman army, weighed down by heavy armor and slow movement, appeared helpless before them. With every new treaty, Rome was forced to hand over more gold and tribute. Attila realized that the true weakness of the Roman Empire was its wealth. Rome could be subdued not only by the sword, but also by the weight of gold. During this time, Attila also strengthened his standing among his own people. He began uniting the various Hun tribes under a single banner. Tribes that once clashed with one another were now coming together under Attila's leadership. Bleda remained engaged mostly in treaties and diplomacy, but the military and political direction was set by Attila. Hun warriors and elders openly declared that the true leader was Attila. His courage, strategy, and charisma were inspiring everyone. This was the period in which Attila defined his identity. He was no longer merely a co-ruler, but a leader whose eyes were fixed on the very heart of the Roman Empire. Europe now understood that a new power was rising, a power the world would one day call the Scourge of God. In the 440s, Attila displayed his skill not only on the battlefield, but also in politics and diplomacy. The power of the Huns had grown, and Rome was forced to bow again and again. Every treaty and every tribute became a new victory for Attila. After the Treaty of Margus, the Roman Empire paid a heavy amount of gold, but this was only the beginning. Hun riders repeatedly stormed the frontiers and plundered Roman towns. Each time, Rome was forced to buy peace with even more gold. Attila had realized that the true weakness of the Roman Empire was its wealth. He understood that an enemy could be defeated under the weight of gold, as well as by the sword. Roman and Byzantine envoys often came to Attila's court. They carried gifts in their hands, fear in their eyes, and pleas for peace on their lips. Attila impressed them with a mix of simplicity and severity. His tent carried the austerity of a nomadic leader, yet his presence was so commanding that even the greatest ambassadors trembled. They knew that this man had the power to shake their empires. The Byzantine Empire also tried many times to maintain peace by paying gold to the Huns. Sometimes they handed over ransom for prisoners. Sometimes they emptied their treasuries to save their cities. But for Attila, it was never just about wealth. It was also a psychological game. With every treaty, he sent a message that both Rome and Byzantium were under his shadow. This was the period when Attila began to earn his reputation as the Scourge of God. He was not only a conqueror of battlefields, but also a politician who could force his enemies to bow without ever drawing his sword. In the year 445 AD, a decisive turning point arrived. Attila and Bleda had ruled together for several years, but the difference in their leadership styles was growing. Bleda emphasized peace and treaties, while Attila preferred war and conquests. This difference could not last long. That same year, Bleda died. Some historians say it was an accident, but most accounts suggest that Attila himself removed Bleda from the path to gain complete power. Whatever the truth, the result was clear. Attila became the sole ruler of the Huns. With absolute authority in his hands, Attila began to reshape the Hun Empire. He strengthened the tribal union, enforced strict military discipline among his soldiers, and gave his court such prestige that even his enemies were forced to acknowledge his greatness. Now Attila held not only military strength, but also full political control. He knew that Rome, weakened by its wealth and fragile borders, would always remain under his pressure. He forced Rome into further tributes and agreements, but in his heart, a greater dream was taking shape: to strike at the very heart of Europe. In 451 AD, a moment arrived in Attila's life when the Huns reached the peak of their power and penetrated the heart of Europe. Attila had now become the sole ruler, and his intentions were vast and ruthless. After putting pressure on Rome and its allies, Attila turned his attention toward the land of Gaul. This region, located in the northern part of the Roman Empire, held immense economic and military significance. Attila's army, composed of desert and mounted nomads, quickly reached the heart of Gaul. Every tribe that faced his forces was struck with fear. Roman officials and local leaders knew that Attila's arrival was like a destructive storm, and his plans always carried dangerous consequences. The Catalonian plains were the site of the greatest confrontation in history. Rome, along with local Gallic tribes, gathered forces to counter the power of the Huns. Marshalling and military strategy would be the key to this battle, as Hun cavalry units were always skilled in speed and surprise attacks. The battle began. Attila's forces struck like lightning, but the Romans and Gallic tribes resisted fiercely. The ground echoed with the thunder of hooves, the sound of arrows and swords, and the war cries of soldiers. Every corner was a scene of devastation and bloodshed. This clash on the Catalonian plains was not only the largest, but also a historical shock. Severe sacrifices were made on both sides. The might and skill of the Huns were challenged by the combined forces of Rome and Gaul, resulting in a long and bloody fight. Attila, who always stayed among his troops, was not only leading the battle, but also boosting the morale of his soldiers. His courage, composure, and strategy made the Huns a formidable opponent in the fight. Yet the bravery and strong defense of the Roman forces halted Attila's advance, and the battle ended historically as a stalemate. After this battle, Attila did not complete his conquest of Gaul, but he sent a clear message to Europe. The Huns had become an unstoppable force. Rome and its allies realized that Attila's army could not be stopped by ordinary means. The Battle of the Catalonian Plains, later remembered as a great and devastating clash in history, was a testament to the growing power of the Huns. It was during this period that Attila's fame as a warrior and master strategist was cemented. The Hun army had become a symbol of terror across Europe. Attila not only instilled fear in Rome, but also secured his place in European history as a great conqueror. In 452 AD, Attila sent his army toward Italy. After the Battle of the Catalonian Plains in Gaul, the power and fear of the Huns were known throughout every region of Europe. The rulers of Rome realized that Attila's army could not be stopped by ordinary means. Amid this fear and pressure, Attila advanced toward the borders of Rome. The land of Italy, filled with mountains, rivers, and valleys, lay ahead. Attila's mounted army moved swiftly, terrifying nearby towns and villages and plundering wherever they went. The local people and Roman forces, already intimidated by the reputation of the Huns, felt powerless against such a strong and fearsome enemy. The rulers of Rome understood that military resistance alone would not be enough. They were forced to adopt the path of negotiations and diplomacy. At this critical moment, Pope Leo I displayed his courage and wisdom. According to historical accounts, Pope Leo met Attila face to face. This meeting was not only historical, but also legendary. Pope Leo pleaded with Attila to spare Rome, to protect the city, and to respect the sanctity of its holy places. Attila, always known for demonstrating his power and authority, appeared confident and wise during this encounter. The Pope's words and faith made a profound impact on Attila, and historically, it is said that Rome was spared from destruction that day. After the meeting, Attila decided to withdraw from the vicinity of Rome. He was not only a warrior, but also a shrewd ruler, understanding that battle alone does not solve everything. Attila also collected heavy tribute from Rome, but refrained from destroying the city. As his army returned from Italy, a sense of both respect and fear remained among them. European rulers realized that the Huns' power was not only in their mounted warriors, but also in a clever, ruthless, and intelligent leader. This march and the meeting with Pope Leo the First further solidified Attila's fame and marked him as a great conqueror in history. This period was a clear demonstration of Attila's political and military skill. The Hun army became a terrifying and nearly invincible force across Europe. The encounter with Pope Leo the First not only saved Rome from destruction, but also showcased Attila as a wise and powerful ruler to the world. In 453 AD, the final moment of Attila's life began with an unforgettable and historic scene. Attila, who was a symbol of fear across every region of Europe, was in a state of rest and happiness after his wedding ceremony. He was excited and joyful at the beginning of this new chapter of his life, while the great and minor chiefs of the Huns were present at his wedding celebrations. The sounds of music and festivity echoed throughout the entire camp. The wedding venue was adorned with rows of tents, expensive clothes, and jewelry. Attila was spending moments with his bride, immersed in joy and celebration. His loyal companions were around him, and the power of the Hun army was felt in every heart. But in the midst of these moments of happiness, an unexpected tragedy occurred. Attila suddenly lost consciousness. According to historical accounts, it was most likely due to bleeding from a nose or throat or a heart attack. The moment was so sudden and shocking that everyone present at the ceremony held their breath in fear and astonishment. The Hun chiefs and companions immediately rushed to Attila's side, but it was impossible to save the life of the mighty king. He passed away, and the most feared power in Europe vanished in an instant. That night, which should have been remembered for joy and celebration, turned into a historic tragedy. Immediately after Attila's death, a struggle for power erupted among the Huns. In his absence, divisions and conflicts arose among the tribes. Tribes that had once been united under Attila's strong rule now split apart and turned against each other. The Romans and European rulers quickly realized that, after Attila's death, the power of the Huns was weakening. The enemy that once seemed invincible was now weakened by internal conflicts and a lack of leadership. This period marked the beginning of the decline of the Huns. Attila's leadership, courage, and wisdom had made him a great conqueror. But in his absence, the Huns' power rapidly diminished. The wave of fear across Europe ended, and the influence of the Huns became a story of the past. Attila the Hun, a name that once echoed fear across Europe, may have fallen on his wedding night, but his legend never faded. From the vast Eurasian steppes to the heart of Roman lands, his life was a storm of courage, strategy, and ruthless ambition. Even after his death, the stories of his conquests, his leadership, and the terror he inspired lived on. Tribes fractured, empires breathed easier, yet the shadow of Attila remained. Proof that one man's legacy can transcend death itself. As history turns its pages, we remember not just a warrior, but a force of nature whose impact shaped an entire continent. His story reminds us that true legends never die. If this journey through history moved you, like, subscribe, and turn on notifications for more epic tales of the world's greatest leaders.